Well, hello. This is rather odd. Greetings to all those who are tuning in. I am the Steampunk Vicar, rather a good friend of your friend, the ADHD Preacher. He's asked me to take a crack at reading one of these executive orders to see if putting a little, as he said, a little mustard on it makes it of more interest to a general audience. My bona fides are rather different than the ADHD Preacher's. I am a time traveller, you see, from an alternate reality, one in which steam-powered technology remains king. We have moved past coal and other fossil fuels, but steam itself drives the engines that make the world great. And I am indeed a vicar. I am incumbent in the parish of St. Tachyon, outside of Glasgow in Scotland. No, I'm not Scottish myself. The ADHD Preacher asked me to take a read of this, and I'm going to present again one of the executive orders from this particular timeline. I'm so sorry about your timeline. I do apologize for you. So let us go ahead and get started. Behold, our executive order is commencing the reduction of the federal bureaucracy. An executive order dated February the 19th, 2025. 2025 is so much better. I will attempt to read the entirety of the executive order, as one might say, straight, that is to say, without a great deal of interpretation, and then I shall loop back round and see if there's anything on which I would particularly like to comment. Thank you for joining us. By the authority vested in me as President by the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America, it is hereby ordered. Section 1. Purpose. It is the policy of my administration to dramatically reduce the size of the federal government while increasing its accountability to the American people. This order commences a reduction in the elements of the federal bureaucracy that the President has determined are unnecessary. Reducing the size of the federal government will minimize government waste and abuse, reduce inflation, and promote American freedom and innovation. Section 2. Reducing the scope of the federal bureaucracy. Paragraph A. The non-statutory components and functions of the following governmental entities shall be eliminated to the maximum extent consistent with applicable law, and such entities shall reduce the performance of the statutory functions and associated personnel to the minimum presence and function required by law. Subparagraph 1. The Presidio Trust. 2. The Inter-American Foundation. 3. The United States African Development Foundation. And 4. The United States Institute of Peace. Within 14 days of the date of this order, the head of each unnecessary governmental entity listed in subsection A of this section shall submit a report to the Director of the Office of Management and Budget, the OMB Director, confirming compliance with this order and stating whether the governmental entity or any components or functions thereof are statutorily required and to what extent. Paragraph C. In reviewing budget requests submitted by the governmental entities listed in subsection A of this section, the OMB Director or the head of any executive department or agency charged with reviewing grant requests by such entities shall, to the extent consistent with applicable law and except insofar as necessary to effectuate unexpected termination, reject funding requests for such governmental entities to the extent they are inconsistent with this order. Paragraph D. Subsection D, I suppose. The Presidential Memorandum of November 13th, 1961, brackets, need for greater coordination of regional and field activities of the government, is hereby revoked. The Director of the Office of Personnel Management, OPM Director, is directed to initiate the process to withdraw the regulations at Title V, Part 960 Code of Federal Regulations, thereby eliminating the Federal Executive Boards. Subsection E. The OPM Director is directed to initiate the process to withdraw the regulations at Title V, Part 362, Subpart D, Code of Federal Regulations, and to take any other steps necessary to promptly terminate the Presidential Management Fellows Program. On the effective date of the final regulations promulgated by the OPM Director, Executive Order 13318 of November 21st, 2003 is revoked, and Executive Order 13562 of December 27, 2010 is amended by striking from Section 2, I apologize, Paragraph 1. I will have to go in and examine exactly what my language should be about your paragraphs and subparagraphs. Item 1. Striking from Section 2 the words along with the Presidential Management Fellows Program as modified herein. Section 2, striking Section 5. Section 3. Striking from Section 6b the words or PMF programs and inserting in their place program. 4. Striking from Section 7b(3) the words the competitive service of interns, recent graduates, or PMFs, or a government-wide combined conversion cap applicable to all three categories together, and inserting in their place the competitive service of interns, or recent graduate, or a government-wide combined conversion cap applicable to both categories together, and 5. Redesigning Sections 6, 7, 8, and 9 as Sections 5, 6, 7, and 8, respectively. Within 14 days of the date of this order, the following heads of executive departments and agencies, brackets, agencies, shall take the following actions with respect to the following federal advisory committees within their respective agencies. 1. The Administrator of the United States Agency for International Development shall terminate the Advisory Committee on Voluntary Foreign Aid. 2. The Director of the Bureau of Consumer Financial Protection shall terminate the Academic Research Council and the Credit Union Advisory Council. 3. The Board of Directors of the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation shall terminate the Community Bank Advisory Council. 4. The Secretary of Health and Human Services shall terminate the Secretary's Advisory Committee on Long COVID. And 5. The Administrator of the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services shall terminate the Health Equity Advisory Committee. G. Let us remind ourselves, because our web developers, what we would call them in my timeline, have failed to indent in a nested way their subparagraphs. And I should be surprised to learn that they have, in fact, in any way, if we wished, we could dive into the hypertext markup language that is serving this web page, but we shall not. So reminding ourselves that we are in Section 2, subsection Section 2. We have just finished with subsection F within 14 days of the date of this order, returning now to subsection G. Within 30 days of the date of this order, the Assistant to the President for National Security Affairs, the Assistant to the President for Economic Policy, and the Assistant to the President for Domestic Policy shall identify and submit to the President additional unnecessary governmental entities and federal advisory committees that should be terminated on grounds that they are unnecessary. Section 3. General Provisions. A. Nothing in this order shall be construed to impair or otherwise affect 1. The authority granted by law to an executive department, agency, or the head thereof, or 2. The functions of the Director of the Office of Management and Budget relating to budgetary, administrative, or legislative proposals. B. This order shall be implemented consistent with applicable law and subject to the availability of appropriations. C. This order is not intended to and does not create any right or benefit, substantive or procedural, enforceable at law or in equity by any party against the United States, its departments, agencies, or entities, its officers, employees, or agents, or any other person. The White House, February 19th, 2025. I specify, I believe, in various places, that I take a breath at the end of this process, just a brief moment, to let that sit with us. Also, to reload the page, in order that we don't have any highlighted text inappropriately. Let's take it in parts, shall we? By the authority vested in me as President by the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America, it is hereby ordered. It is, if you are not aware, rather remarkable that the President's authority derives from the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America. If these were to, for some reason, be superseded or revoked or otherwise impaired, the President's authority would vanish. How interesting. Section 1, purpose. It is the policy of my administration to dramatically reduce the size of the federal government, while increasing its accountability to the American people. I don't know if any of you have worked in compliance or accountability. One of the unfortunate realities is that compliance and accountability are difficult and require staffing. That you need ideally independent people who are not in the primary chain of command to review decisions that are made and functions of any large bureaucracy or organization. This at least has been the experience of, anyone who's ever done it. So, this order commences a reduction in the elements of the federal bureaucracy that the President has determined are unnecessary. by himself, I'm sure. Reducing the size of the federal government will minimize government waste and abuse, reduce inflation, and promote American freedom and innovation. A bold claim, sir. Much of the remains of this, I will say, is rather in the weeds for me as a steampunk figure. I am not necessarily expert in matters of the laws of the United States, and indeed the law. But I shall review a few points that I find particularly noteworthy. Non-statutory components and functions of the following governmental entities. I regret to say that I have not heard of any of these institutions. Shall we, for a moment, explore what they are and what they do? The Presidio Trust, a federal agency whose mission is to work to support this particular national park. Interesting. I have much that I'd like to say about it. Specifically, is there a particular reason that the Presidio Trust is or is not? Is this the Presidio Trust of which the President speaks? If so, I'm not entirely surprised to hear that it is on the chopping block, as it seems to me that the National Park Service would normally be the institution that would care for such an organization. I will say, in this particular case, all right. Very well. Why is the Presidio Trust? Very well. Very good. The Inter-American Foundation. I'm willing to guess that this has to do either with Mexico or with Canada, or both. The Inter-American Foundation. Yes, directly investing in community-led development across Latin America and the Caribbean. I am looking at this for the first time, and I will say, I should not be surprised to learn that part of the mission of an Inter-American Foundation of this kind is to help support Latin American and Caribbean nations and prevent some of their citizens from turning to, say, crime, drugs, other similar habits. But that is a projection on my part, not necessarily true. The United States African Development Foundation. Creating pathways to prosperity. Africa is in dire straits, much of it. Not all of it, but much of it, in dire straits. And the support of the United States in helping create pathways to prosperity and hopefully a more just and equitable future for Africans seems laudable to me. I have specific personal family history with Africa that would incline me to say that is the United States African Development Foundation necessary? By no means. And the Presidio Trust seems to me to be possibly somewhat duplicative. I can imagine these. The U.S. Institute of Peace. Congress. Interesting. Congress founded the U.S. Institute of Peace in 1984 as a nonpartisan independent organization dedicated to protecting U.S. interests. How interesting that Congress founded it. Is the President permitted to close an agency that the Congress has founded? Within 14 days of the date of this order, the head of each unnecessary governmental entity listed in subsection A shall submit a report to the OMB confirming compliance and stating whether the governmental entity or any components or functions thereof are statutorily required and to what extent. Are you saying, sir, that you have said that these organizations should close without having checked whether or not you are legally required to keep them? I'm shocked. In reviewing budget requests submitted by the governmental entities listed in subsection A, the OMB director shall reject funding requests for such governmental entities to the extent they are inconsistent with this order. The Presidential Memorandum of November 13th, 1961, this would have been during the administration of your President Kennedy. Need for greater coordination of regional and field activities of the government is hereby revoked. The Director of the OPM is directed to initiate the process to withdraw the regulations at Title V, Part 960 Code of Federal Regulations, thereby eliminating the federal executive laws. OPM Director is directed to initiate the process to withdraw the regulations at Title V, Part 362, Part D, to take any other steps necessary to promptly terminate the Presidential Management Fellows Program. Presidential Management Fellows. What is the Presidential Management Fellows Program? It's the federal government's premier leadership development program for advanced degree holders across all disciplines, matched outstanding graduate students with exciting federal opportunities. It's gone through several changes to recruit and develop a cadre of future government leaders from all segments of society. It is as though you suspect that you won't need government leaders in the future. On the effective date, Executive Order 1338 of November 21, 2003 is revoked, and 13562 of December 27, 2010 is amended by striking, along with the Presidential Management Fellows Program, as modified herein, striking Section 5, striking the words all PMF programs and inserting in their place programs, striking from 7B. Yes, very inside baseball, very, very specific to this Presidential Management Fellows Program. Within 14 days of the date of this order, and this, I will say, is the one section that is of greatest interest to me, within 14 days of the date of this order, the following heads of executive departments and agencies shall take the following actions with respect to the following federal advisory committees within their respective agencies. 1. The Administrator of the United States Agency for International Development shall terminate the Advisory Committee on Voluntary Foreign Aid. So, we've already established that the President is not a huge fan of USAID, the Agency for International Development. It's been the public voice now. Foreign assistance is carried out in the United States. Oh my, a LinkedIn page. Between government agencies and organizations working in international development. A public advisory committee. To respond to the multi-dimensional challenges of today, foreign assistance needs to be fit for purpose, brings perspectives from a broad group, making it well-paced. Was there not something about accountability? I'm sure I heard the word accountability in the last 15 minutes. The Director of the Bureau of Consumer Financial Protection shall terminate the Academic Research Council and the Credit Union Advisory Council. The Board of Directors of the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation shall terminate the Community Bank Advisory Council. The Secretary of Health and Human Services shall terminate the Secretary's Advisory Committee on Long COVID. I have been in contact with my good friend, the ADHD preacher. I believe that it's worth noting there was a great deal of discussion in this particular document about chronic disease. 17 times the word chronic appears. Chronic disease, chronic and mental health condition, and 90% of the nation's $4.5 trillion in annual healthcare expenditures. Drastically lowering chronic disease rates. Must focus on reversing chronic disease. A great deal on childhood chronic illness. Exposures posed to children with respect to chronic inflammation. Childhood chronic disease. By any chance, does the word COVID appear but the once in a statistical point? My friends, it seems remarkable to me that on the 13th of February, the President issued an executive order deeply concerned with chronic illness to make America healthy again. And that 1 week later, perhaps not even, perhaps 6 days later, the President has specified that the Secretary's Advisory Committee on Long COVID should be disbanded. This seems remarkable to me. And perhaps there's an argument, of which I am unaware, that states that this work is duplicative, that there is another organ within Health and Human Services working on long COVID and other similar viral infections with long-tailed results, leading to chronic illness, chronic pain. I'm not entirely convinced, however, that there is. For as much as the Make America Healthy Again Commission has been tasked with tackling childhood chronic illness and diabetes and these other very laudable things, there was very little mention of chronic fatigue or long COVID and their effects on people. I find this remarkable. Where was I? The Administrator of the Centers of Medicare and Medicaid Services shall terminate the Health Equity Advisory Committee. I strongly suspect this has to do with DEI. I would not be surprised if it did not. And within 30 days of this order, various assistants to the President for Policy and Security Affairs shall submit to the President additional unnecessary governmental entities and federal advisory committees that should be terminated on grounds that they are unnecessary. Yes. And then, of course, Section 3, which is somewhat boilerplate in my experience thus far. Maybe cut from future readings. There you have it. The word unnecessary appears 4 times in the commencing the reduction of the Federal Bureaucracy executive order. Once with regard to elements of the Federal Bureaucracy that the President has determined are unnecessary or that his assistants will inform him are. The head of the unnecessary governmental entities, and the assistants are asked to find additional ones. Unnecessary is such an interesting word. The Constitution, I believe, if I remember your Constitution correctly, specifies that the purpose of the Constitution and of the government is to promote the public welfare in order to form a more perfect union. Let us, in fact, let us turn to the Constitution itself. Behold the National Archives. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. It is not necessary to promote the general welfare. It is something we agreed to do, and that everyone who has ever since voted in an election or paid taxes, or everyone that has ever been an American citizen, everyone has the opportunity to say, yes, I sign on to this Constitution, or no, I do not, and to bog off to some other nation or timeline as they choose. We have decided that we shall promote the general welfare, and I don't say necessarily that the government is not bloated and full of bureaucracy and organs that are not fit for purpose or are not serving the purposes that they were intended. I believe that President Trump and Mr. Musk will succeed in cutting substantial spending from the federal government. I don't believe that the President alone should be determining what is or is not necessary. And I do believe that Congress may say that several things are, if not necessary, then at least have been decided by Congress, which I believe is a co-equal branch of the executive. All this said, I hope that the many, many people who now have no employment due to the President's desire to cut the federal bureaucracy are able to land on their feet. It has been, as I understand, rather a tough job market for white-collar professionals of late, and I don't imagine this will make it any easier. That's all that I have. My first-time chat is from a bot. Robots are very tiresome. I hope that you all have a pleasant day. I hope that you find peace and justice, tranquility, common defense, and the blessings of liberty for yourself and for your family, and for your nation. Cheerio, I'm the Steampunk Vicar. I shall see you next time.